So in this session I will talk about Boids physics, and Boids physics is for this type of animation. So birds, fishes, insects, zombies, everything that is in that flock, and you need some random things going on in that flock. Then you use that type of animation. So we can go directly into Blender, and now you can download a file called intro Boids, and then you will get this file here. What I have right now is 3 birds that I did rather quickly. So they are not the best bird in the world, but they're at least moving a little bit. So I use 3 different birds, and even if they look the same, to get 3 different animations into my collection, so they don't have the same wing flaps. Okay, so here we have the birds, and then we have something moving around here like an empty, and that I will go through later on where I have it. And then I have this plane, and here we will put all the particles. So select the plane and then go to particle properties and press the plus sign. Here we'll have all the birds. I think we can have like 100 birds here. We start all the birds at the same time, so change n to 1 and put in a really long lifetime, so you don't risk the birds of dying during the animation. I think we can put it to like 1000. So now we have all that in, so go to physics type, and there we will change Newtonian to Boids. If I should explain Boids a bit, it's like a brain, not the big brain, but the brain that can hold like, I don't know, 2, perhaps 3, 4 different rules in the head. So you set up a list of rules, and then the particles try to follow those rules. And the first rule is always the most important, and then it takes the next one, and if it has some power or capacity, then it takes the third rule, and the fourth, and so on. If you go 4 or 5 rules, it will be really too hard for the particles to follow all those rules. So then you just select the first one, and the particle will never use like the 5th, or even if you have put it in the 6th rule. So try to keep it rather few rules for the particles, and I will go through how all those rules works just a little bit, since this is an introduction. We go deeper in later session, but you really get the hint about it anyway. You can say that these particles are like, I don't know, creatures or living beings, so they have like different type of abilities. They can fly, they can crawl, they can climb, and they have acceleration, so they can move around and so on. All these things are controlled in the part called movement. Here we have a section called movement, and here you can say that they should have some proper speed, and it should be at least that speed. You can have some acceleration, how fast they should turn, and so on and so on. We put more information or change these things as soon as I put in the birds. So we start going to render as, put in collection, and in instance collection select birds. Now I have all the birds in here, as you can see them, but not so much, but they are there. What we can do with those is that we can now get in and change the mass for the physics, and I think we can change it to like 0.4. So we have lighter birds in this session here. If I now press the animation button here, you can see that the birds are already flying around, but it doesn't look so good. It doesn't like birds flying. They're more stuck in each other, having really high problem to separate from each other. I don't know if they are like worms, food, or whatever. They just stay put. So I don't think that's flying. To make those birds fly a bit, we need some speed. We have a maximum, but the minimum is 0. So we increase the speed here a bit. And if I do that, then run the animation, you can see it's getting much faster and they are leaving the plane here. But still, they are very, very close together. And that is not how it works in reality. So we need to put in some space between the particles. So you put in some space. Here we have add personal space, and you can say here that one particle should have a lot of space between that particle and the next particle. So we can put in like 7 or something like here. And if I now run the animation, you can see that they are not like very, very close. They are still going like together in some row like this, but it starts to look like flying birds. Okay, then we don't want these birds to like turn 180 degrees directly. They need some distance to be able to turn. So we should shrink something called angular velocity a little bit. So we have here max angular velocity. And if I decrease that to like 0.2, it will be harder for them to just turn around. So now they will just go in one direction because they will first flee and then they are like coming together. Now they're going 3 different directions and it starts to really look like birds flying away. You can then play a little bit more and can change the acceleration so it gets a bit faster. You can start a bit faster as well. But that is more like what you can say details here. So now they're flying away and it looks okay. But what are we doing with this little empty here? Why do we have it in the scene? Well, I would like to add a rule into these boards. Particles using this empty. And what I will do is that I will call this empty a leader. And I would like all the birds to follow that leader rather loosely, but still I would like them to follow that leader. So what I do is then I go to my plane and then I go to my Boid brain and we already have 2 rules. So we have 1 rule for separate. And if I start animation, you can see the first thing it does is that it flees from each other. So it separates on 3 or 4 different directions. So it will not collide with each other. However, as soon as it starts, it gets to the next rule, and the next rule is that it should flock. So they are not totally separated. Try to be together, but not too close. So then we get this flock here, and it looks like a bird flock. And that is what we have here. So what I would like now to do is put the rule about the leader here. So I press the plus sign. And we have a lot of things to select from, but one of those are like follow the leader. So we put in follow leader, and I would like these birds to follow leader as soon as they are trying to separate. So they need some direction. So what I do is I put this to place number 2. And then I must tell the particles which leader should I follow. And that, you know, is the empty. So I go to the eyedropper and then I select empty. I get the name here. And then the particles know that this is the leader. So if I now run the animation, you can see that it follows that empty. It's not like 100%, but it's still some random pattern. But you can clearly see that it's following the leader here. So now we have some directions for those birds. So you have different rules for different things, and follow leader is 1. And you also have like a goal. It's almost the same. Then you have avoid, and you have separate, flock, follow leader. You have a lot of things here. And in later sessions, I will go through everything, and this is more like an introduction. So you get a little bit of what I can do with these Boid particles. And it looks really nice. And if I look in the camera right now, you can see they're flying around and it looks fantastic. If I go to render view, you will have all those birds flying here, and I don't want to see this plane to be visible, so I go down to my render and then I just uncheck show emitter. If I have that checked, and now it's unchecked, and that's good. So if I do a render by just pressing F12, then we get all these birds here in a good way, and this is how it looks. But now it's not an animation, it's just a still image. And I use cycles here to get some blur on the birds as well, and some nice lights here and so on. Since it's only a very small portion of the image that are in models, it only takes 3 or 4 seconds to render the image, even if it's in cycle. So it's okay for me to render this in cycles. I go back to my 3D viewport, and before I end this session, I would like you to see something else. So I go back to solid view, and these are now going so smooth and nice and everything. But in reality, you have a little bit of turbulence in the air. So you can put in forces. And you can use forces inside the particle system here. So if you just get a tiny bit here, you have a force field settings. So check the self effect. You can take up the effector amount, and if you put that really high, you will get a lot of these particles to react on the forces. If you have a bit less, then it's not so noticeable, so you can control how much you want the forces to interact with your particles here. And then you can just select the type of force. And what we would like to have is some type of turbulence, so we select that one. So by doing this, we can now get some more variations into this. Then it will be more like particles are fighting the turbulence a bit here, and now it looks more real, and you can of course increase that and increase the strength here and so on to get the pattern that you want to have. And some birds, they fly in a high turbulence without anyone seeing that you have turbulence, while other birds are very sensitive to what is happening in the air. So you can control that depending on what type of birds you're trying to do. So, well, this is all you have to do. So I think it's really simple when you have learned these few rules, how they work. And as I said, you can change control and the movement very much by changing a lot of small things here in the movement chapter. So you can tell that they can both fly, and they can land, or they can climb, and they can do a lot of stuff. So you can, by unchecking allow flight, make them just crawl on the ground, totally unable to fly. So a lot of stuff here. It looks really nice in the end, and this is, I think, one of the most simple things that you can do. So I hope you enjoyed this session and that you now know a bit about Boids particles. And then I will show the next session with a new type of physics. So I just say bye for now.